tract development. The city offered to provide 10 acres to the college if we would commit to a few things. One was to build a campus building and actually set ground there. Two was to invest just shy of $250,000 in site improvements to help with the extension of curb, gutter, sewer, and things like that that actually would make that development a little bit easier to extend onto other lots. And so in 2004, the college's foundation at that time issued lease revenue bonds for the Albany County campus building, and we constructed that building. Next slide, please. So we opened in 2005. Long story short, we started operating, enrollments grew quite exponentially. A lot of excitement over the new facility, a lot of excitement over the possibilities of the community college there, and really saw some nice response to the new facility. We had then shifted basically the financing from the foundation to our building authority, and then ultimately through some lease revenue bonds shifted ownership away from the foundation to the college in 2012. So next slide, please. Just a point of perspective in terms of programming, as we've been doing our analysis, really trying to understand what were the drivers for our expansion and our growth in Laramie. What was the underlying sort of push? In 1987, we had about 20 full-time equivalents. So the easiest way to think about that is 20 full-time students, even though at that time it was probably closer to 60 part-time students. But 20 FTE in credit-bearing coursework. As I said, our adult basic education program was actually quite strong. By 1995, we had grown to 257 full-time equivalents, about 1,000 student headcount, and 450 students in our adult basic ed and our non-credit programming. At that time, the budget for ACC was, Albany County campus was about over $500,000, so $586,000. We had about 15 benefited faculty and staff there. Going back through our course records, it was interesting to kind of follow and watch and just see the courses that we offered, and you can kind of see some of the things that were driving us at that time. A lot, centered around healthcare, still is maybe a holdover of our practical nursing programming, and also supporting pre-programmed students. Introduction to the horse world, which I'm not quite sure what motivated that one. Computer information technology was sort of, ramping up there. And then you'll see some of the basic skills and the things that we were trying to do either with adult basic ed populations or with the university. And then actually some of the courses I think that Trustee Soto may have offered for us over there in our paralegal and justice studies programs. Next slide, please. So when we look at the Albany County campus today, right now, it's got about a $3.2 million budget. We had 224 regular benefited employees. Interesting here, if you look at the numbers, we have 389 full-time equivalents in credit courses. So about 100 more than we did back in the mid-90s, but our head count is almost dropped back to that same 1,000 level. We're at 1,100 student head count completed from last year. We don't have full year numbers for this year yet. But it's interesting that while we've got a few more students taking more credits, those probably enrolled in our programs, the overall student headcount has gone from about 1,000 in the mid-90s and then 2,000, then dropped back down. Adult or basic ed and non-credit has actually decreased, mostly on the adult basic ed side, to about 228 students there. Non-credit programming, though, is really starting to show some promise, especially as we stand up more and more non-credit customized trainings, workplace trainings for businesses in Albany County. Next slide, please. Just a quick analysis here, just for employee perspective. You can see back in FY17, we had 32 full-time employees. Today we have 24. A function of that is budget cuts, unfortunately, but also trying to adapt to the changes in demand. Part-time employees, you can see also a drop from 79 in 17, mostly adjunct faculty, down to 42. And as our course offerings have changed to adapt to demand and need, those numbers have reduced as well. Interesting though, we've stabilized the full-time and are relying less on part-time employees, and there's a variety of reasons for that. One of the big ones right now is just in some ways competing with the university for adjunct faculty because of the pay differential between the community college and the university. Next slide, please. So some of the reasons we're having this conversation and looking at it, the enrollment trajectory for the Albany County campus has been sharp and has been declining. For the last 5 years, the Albany County campus's enrollment in credit courses has decreased about 35%. Now, community colleges and higher ed enrollment across the nation have also been decreasing, even through the pandemic. But as a comparison, LCCC overall with the Albany County campus's enrollments in there have decreased about 13%, but you can see a significantly larger reduction at the Albany County campus. Next slide, please. These charts get kind of colorful, but what you're looking at here essentially is different types of enrollments at the Albany County campus. And so that pinkish line, I think, is the way it shows, the one that starts up at 832. Those are our traditional on-campus credit-bearing courses, and you can see the significant drop from 2016-17 at 832 to this last year at 268 enrollments. Online or distance students, that green line has kind of stayed steady, a little dip in the middle, and then they're smaller numbers, but we're seeing some growth on the early college activities, dual and concurrent enrollment activities. If you look at the bottom, the UW classes have been interesting. There were some changes at the university, I think, with how they were working with students that weren't quite math ready, and also handling taking in students that maybe weren't quite as academically prepared as others. So a significant drop in the number of students from what we were serving for the university, essentially to what we are serving now. So 554 students in 16-17, and then this drop down to 177 and up just over 200 here in 2021. Next slide, please. Looking at just our high school populations then, again, as I said, our dual enrollment has really been pretty strong. So these are students that are at Laramie High, for the most part, that are coming over to the Albany County campus and enrolling in college level coursework. That's that yellow line. Dual fusion, the green line, is reflective of the programming we have at Laramie High, but our faculty are there. Most of that is associated right now with our automotive tech program that's on the Laramie High School campus. And we just launched culinary programming there this fall. So we'll see some changes, I think, in those numbers. You know, they're smaller numbers. It looks more variable here, but actually have stabilized. And the high school is, you know, a fairly consistent population for our programming. Next slide, please. Historically, almost a third of our demand has been mathematics and English. That's sort of been our bread and butter over there. It certainly was with the university, still is with mathematics at the university, and providing math courses on the university campus for university students. English, a large portion of that as well. And then over the years, science, business, and social sciences. So what would make up our general education block, or the university's university studies program, those have been the predominant course offerings of the college that have really seemed to have taken hold and have enough enrollment. Next slide, please. Financially, then, this is the other problem with that enrollment decline. We see financial decline, and this is a good place for me to pause. Right now, community colleges are funded by three sources. We receive state funding, we receive local funding from the districts that have established districts, in this case the counties, and then we receive tuition and fee revenues as well. We cannot use Laramie County tax revenues, so those revenues generated from property taxes in Laramie County, in Albany County. So we have to ensure that we account for revenues coming from state and from tuition specific to the Albany County campus operations, and those are the only funds that we can currently use to support the Albany County campus. And what we've seen with the budget reductions, our revenue has reduced substantially, and our expenditures have abated some, but still you see about a $500,000 differential between the two, and that gap is growing, and that's really putting the pressure as we look at how we accommodate the changes in overall state funding for the institution. Next slide, please. Quick look at revenues. It's not going to show you a whole lot more than what I just sort of shared. If you look at revenues and expenditures, you can see that from last year, FY20, we had a deficit of $651,000. Now, I will say this bottom line that says total building debt payments, those are the debt service on the Albany County campus building. They get paid off in 2024. So that annual $240,000 that's going to service the debt on that building will actually be satisfied in 2024. So that amount drops off. So once that drops off in FY20, we actually would have been sitting at about a $400,000 deficit instead of a $651,000 deficit. Next slide, please. And so one of the areas we've been having conversation about and really trying to reflect upon is thinking about what's the purpose of the Albany County campus. And this has been something that's been a bit of a challenge and yet a bit of a surprise. And I'm going to probably task all of you to help clarify this for me. Really trying to find the history or what the impetus or the big motivator from Albany County, from Laramie, was for our presence in Laramie, and trying to understand what is the purpose that we're trying to serve. There's lots of ideas and lots of interest, but generally as a community college, our mission is to respond to the needs of the community. And so that's one of the things we've really been trying to put feelers out and try to understand is what were those needs that were so compelling that my predecessors and our forefathers and Trustee Soto's predecessor said we need to actually expand that footprint in Laramie. But as we've looked at where we can be successful, there's really three things that we believe we can do over there if we're going to continue to have a presence in Laramie. One is we have to offer programming to populations or markets that nobody else is serving. I mean, we sit in the shadow of the university. The LCCC main campus is 45 miles over the hill. We have two other major universities within 45 miles, other community colleges. And so in a market that has that type of higher education presence, we can't be trying to offer the same thing to the same people in the same way. Number two is we can offer different programming to populations that other people are currently serving. So if we fill a niche because nobody's actually providing that program, product, or service, there's opportunity there. And then the last one is one we've been exploring is what if we offer the same programs to the same people, but we do it in a completely different way? Competency-based education, block scheduling, whatever it is. Those are really the three things that will help us find a viable path for the Albany County campus actually to succeed in the future. Next slide, please. I won't look at this, just giving you an idea. It's just a basic scatter plot, looks quadrants, and where we're trying to find our sweet spot. And really what we want to have is different offerings in a different market where we aren't competing with everybody. But we recognize that there are some opportunities for different offerings in the same market or the same offerings with a different approach. Next slide. So in terms of where we serve Albany County, and this is interesting because as we talk about expense profiles and the overall footprint, facilities make a big part of that up. But right now, we essentially are serving Albany County on the ACC campus, of course, at Laramie High School, on the UW campus, and through online delivery. And that's important to understand as we start talking about it and as we've been examining, well, can we still serve Albany County? So we are legislatively expected and required to serve Albany County because Albany County is part of the Laramie Community College service area. So we have the District of Laramie County, and then we have a service area that's been assigned by the legislature basically to say, because you receive state fundings, your role is to support the state. So we try to serve Albany County, and we've been doing that in these 4 different areas. And part of our conversation is should we be doing it in fewer of those areas based on the need to find those financial efficiencies? Next slide, please. So here's some of the things that we know about our Albany County campus students. And I think this is important because as we really look at who is taking advantage of the Albany County campus that helps us sort of unravel what the needs for that facility might be over there. So the first thing we know is we are serving a bunch of high school students who are really focused on entry into college. Now there's a small subset of them are thinking about immediate occupational entry or an additional approach, our automotive tech students, for example. For the most part, the high school students that we enroll in our programs and services intend to and do actually go on to college, typically onto a university. That is a significant and growing population that we've served. Then we have these pre-programmed students, and this has been interesting to try to find a way to group them. And I'm going to generalize, there's nuances in here. But in general, we have quite a few students that start at the Albany County campus to take prerequisite coursework to apply to a program somewhere else. And the best example I have is we have a lot of pre-nursing students that plan to apply to the university's program as well as to a community college program, mostly the LCCC program in Cheyenne, but other community college programs. But they're staying in Laramie and they're working on their prerequisite coursework before they apply. So that healthcare group is probably one of the largest, and it's not just nursing, it's radiography, it's sonography, it's pharmacy. There are a bunch of students that are there taking courses to prepare to move on. And then from there, human and public services, education is probably the next group that they start with us with the intent of moving into a program somewhere else. And then we have a very, very few that are sort of undecided, but instead of jumping to the university, they choose us as a more affordable, more intimate place to do that. So there's pre-programmed students that ultimately are going to go somewhere else. And that's important, I think, for our conversation and certainly for your consideration. If they go to the university and stay in Laramie, that's great. If they go somewhere else and then never come back, that's another conversation, and we just don't know that much about them yet. And then the last group is UW students, and that's been a large group that we've served. The numbers have actually been reducing over time, in many ways because of some of the actions the university has taken, good, bad, or indifferent. Most of them are duly enrolled. They take a course from us, but they're degree seeking at the university. And then we get this group that we like to focus on, but it's not as large of a number as we like to say it is. But they're the students that had a rough start at the university, found out themselves on academic probation, or were encouraged to leave, go try somewhere else and come back. And so they turn to us sort of as a way to get back on the track, to get back to the university. Next slide, please. So here are our big challenges as we look at the future for the Albany County campus. Challenge number one is nearly everything we do in Laramie is dependent on others and their direction. And when I say others, I'm referring mostly to those partners that are in the public sector. So for example, our enrollment and programming and services to the high school population is almost entirely predicated on what the high school and the school district wants from us. And over time, we see that change. And as a result, it's hard to always anticipate what's needed or what we're going to do. Working pretty closely with them now and have some potential there. The university, and again, I'm just stating our perception, has had some very volatile times with leadership and with consistency in leadership positions. And again, this is not trying to chastise the university, but when you think about our dependence on them as a partner, knowing where they're going, what they're doing, what they're interested in, and importantly, who's calling the shots is incredibly important. And when that changes frequently, it puts us in positions where we invest, things change, we don't have enrollments, and now we've got an investment in a fixed expense that we can't actually justify, and we go through this sort of cycle with that. And then just the community in and of itself, trying to find that niche, find that need with a developing and maybe a relatively homogeneous economic makeup. It's hard for us to say we're here responding to the healthcare industry, to XYZ industry, but there's just not a good picture on what it is we should be aligning to. So That's a big thing. The university has become less reliant and interested in our services. They are more interested in mainstreaming all the students that come. I think today they accept almost 97% of all applicants, whereas historically they would encourage underprepared students to leverage our services. And again, they may be working with those students just fine and they may be succeeding, but it does impact our enrollments and ultimately our viability over there. The community not having the skin in the game, and talking to community leaders who have been elected to essentially be the stewards over the community, I use that phrase "skin in the game" lightly, recognizing that you all have significant skin in the game of your community. But it is the Albany County campus, and Albany County is the only significant outreach location of a community college where they have a physical presence and physical programming, that there is no type of ongoing or significant support. Jackson, Teton County with CWC, Douglas County with EWC, Gillette, which now is becoming Gillette College with Northern Wyoming Community College District, Western Wyoming Community College's BOCES Center in Rawlins. They all have invested in those facilities to help them sustain and operate, and we just don't have that there. The population base in Laramie, as you all know, has been pretty static. It's not what we would see as a growing, booming university town, which makes sort of planning for increased numbers of students something that we can think about and plan for. But while you have had some nice population bump, I think you were at the last census, the overall growth since the 80s has been pretty stable, which is nice for a community. But in terms of projecting growth and opportunities for higher education institution can present some challenges. Big one for us, online learning, especially post-pandemic, has shifted a lot of the interest from a face-to-face class to an online class. Good, bad, or indifferent, we're seeing that. It also allows us to serve significant numbers of Albany County students through online courses that we can really deliver from anywhere, including the main campus in Cheyenne. And then number 7, this value proposition of education. This is a broader issue that the state, really the country, is going to have to grapple with. But right now, employers are scrambling just to get people to apply for jobs. And as a result, even in the service sector, we're seeing wage increases that are pushing, and as a result are pulling students out of what would have been a college track or post-secondary training track, and they're going to work immediately. That may solve the immediate pressures, the immediate needs, but what we see with a lot of those students is long-term. Even the employers want a higher caliber of employee. They want to see jobs grow, they want to see sophistication, and we just don't get them past that entry level. And so the marketplace is actually working against us and encouraging students to go to work even in the service sector for $18 an hour, then pursue a post-secondary education. So next slide, please. I think that's a close last one. So here are the options that I've presented to the Board of Trustees. There's basically 3 approaches. One is safe and practical, or what I'm calling return to our roots, where we keep the Albany County campus, really focus on the high school populations and align to the best of our abilities with what the general education needs are of UW students, and try to keep 1,000 students over there and really change our expense profile to accommodate for that. There is a bright spot in this, and I do think there's great opportunity, especially for some of the emerging industries in Albany County, like manufacturing is a good example, where we have really had some success in developing non-credit offerings specific for those companies. I think that's a growth area where we can grow, but that's pretty safe. That's not growing the campus. That's not adding new programs. That's not, trying to become this broader, more comprehensive institution. And there's probably a path in here where we can find financial viability for that, as long as we continue to partner well with the university and with the school district. Number 2 is risky aggressive, and it's basically completely changing our business model and rethinking the way we use the Albany County campus. The conversation we've been having is, could that become an online campus for us? That might help preserve the economic impact of the Albany County campus in Laramie. Ultimately, it'll probably function where we have people working that are educating people in other communities who are probably going to stay in other communities, and that's a little bit far from the mission of a community college and building a community's workforce. And then the last one is risky, and that's to reallocate. Given the budget cuts, there's ample opportunity to take that $3.2 million and basically close the Albany County campus and reallocate those funds to new priorities of the college, expanded programming in areas and things like that. That is a very definitive strategy. If we were to close the Albany County campus, liquidate the facility, that shuts doors that are real hard to reopen when and if a community needs that. And so those essentially are the three options I presented to the Board of Trustees. Most of my effort right now is really honing in on option one to see if there's a path there for fiscal solvency. And we think that there probably is, but I share that because that comes with a changed expectation and what I think members that of Laramie and of Albany County have had in what we're doing over there. There's really been an interest of our advisory board to grow, expand, add programs, and that's just not probably within the model of this number one option. So next slide, I think that's the last one. Yeah, thanks. You can go ahead and stop sharing, and then I'd love to hear reactions, questions, thoughts. As I say, we're trying to have this conversation, and I am trying to couch all of this in an informative way. I know sometimes you can read those things and hear those things and you can draw offense, or you can get excited, or you can agree, but really what I'm trying to do is paint a sort of a comprehensive picture of the analysis and the conversation we're having, and given the environment and thus far the legislature's interest in not restoring any of the funding, even with a better fiscal outlook, it's still very much a reality. And so what we do with the Albany County campus is still of a question to us. So Mr. Mayor, Council, men and women, commissioners, thanks for the time. I'd love to hear questions, thoughts, and feedback.
Thank you, President Schaefer. I think what we'd like to do is we'll go over to the commission chambers first, since they're a little bit, they're all in one room there watching with the rest of us, and give them an opportunity for questions first, then we'll come back. It's a little bit easier for me to navigate my screen after we go to them. Commissioner Gosar, Chairman Gosar, do we want to start with any questions over in the commissioner's chamber?
Yeah, so I just have a few, and then maybe Commissioner Avera will join in. On one of those slides, Dr. Schaefer, there was no state funding inserted in fiscal 21, and it produced a $1.5 million shortfall. Did you not get any funding in fiscal year 21?
Well, good question, Commissioner Gosar. Sorry, that when I put those data together, FY21 was not completed. So that's incomplete and didn't show the state funding in it. And that's why I would draw your attention to the FY20 data. We did receive those funds. There were the reductions, and we just weren't able to separate the modeling to show what proportion went to the Albany County campus. So it's an incomplete fiscal year profile is the problem with those data.
And then, thank you, I appreciate that. At what point do people, like, for instance, who enter into nursing or your hygienist program, when do they leave the Albany County campus and can only receive their further training at the LCCC Cheyenne? How does that work?
That's a great question, Commissioner Gosar. So students for all of our limited entry healthcare programs, and I believe this is the case for some of the universities as well, go through a series of prerequisites, and it varies slightly by program, but in general, think of it as a year of prerequisite coursework. And so that is their biology, anatomy and physiology, psychology, sometimes microbiology, the medical terms, and then English, mathematics. They complete those before they can apply to a program. Once they complete those, so generally after a year, they would apply to enter a program. If they're accepted into a program, then that's when they would shift from being able to be sort of fully engaged at the Albany County campus, and then they would either move, they start going to the university, or we have had, actually just last year, we had a nice group of students that commuted from Laramie on a weekly basis to go through the nursing program. So there's a definitive point of prerequisite, completing the prerequisites to apply. At the point of application and acceptance, that's generally when they leave the community or have to make arrangements to finish their education elsewhere.
So just having worked a little bit with Nightingale, where that nursing college is all online, do you think that you've lost students to something like that? Do you think that those could be recovered if there was a different approach to nursing in Albany County. Instead of having to travel to Cheyenne, which I did for 10 years, and it's not an easy thing to do, but I tell you, especially this time of year. Do you think that there's an opportunity to do something like that to maintain students in Albany County?
Commissioner Gosar, a great question. I don't know that we have seen a substantial impact as the result of Nightingale sort of emerging in the market. There's been a few other online providers doing that. Our applications generally still far exceed the number of slots we have allotted by the Board of Nursing for our nursing programming. So I think there's still pent-up demand, and we've had some conversation about looking at a practical nursing program again in Laramie specific to support long-term care facilities and possibly Ivinson. The challenge always becomes the same. In fact, I'd be curious to learn how Nightingale's navigated this. Generally, when we talk about expanding nursing, we already have multiple programs that are using the limited clinical facilities available in Albany County. And so there's not actually, I guess I would say I would be surprised if we could be authorized through the Board of Nursing to actually add a cohort program in Laramie because of the demand that already exists from the university and other colleges to access the clinical facilities that are there. So I don't know that Nightingale has as much of an impact as clinical capacity does.
Yeah, thank you. I just work in that world a little bit, and I know personally of about 8 nursing jobs open at this point in Laramie, and I don't know the full depth and breadth of the shortage, quite honestly.
Yeah, Commissioner Gosar, the other thing that we have discussed is whether or not there are unique programs we could carve out. Certified medical assisting has been one that seems to have a need, but again, creating a program and supporting a whole cohort and having access to both jobs and lab and clinical capacity in Laramie just doesn't ever pencil. There's not enough of them to make a full cohort that we can't more effectively deliver in other modalities. And that's not good, bad, or indifferent. It's just part of the challenge when you have a small market like that. Standing up a program that's unique to the market is really tough to pencil.
President Schaefer, my question, this is Commissioner Ibarra. My question may appear to be pessimistic, and I don't want to sound like, it's the end of the Albany County campus, but you say that you're hoping that you can reach fiscal solvency by possibly going back to what was once vital, and that was focusing on high school students, even though we've had problems working with the school district on some programming and all. And in light that we being Albany County will probably not have a lot of support from the legislature, how feasible, how likely is it that fiscal solvency will be reached, and in what kind of timeline?
Yeah, Commissioner Barrett, thank you for that, and thank you for your support of the Albany County campus and being involved with that over time. I don't think that's pessimistic. I think that's realistic. As I said, one of our primary challenges seems to be this sort of dependency on these external partners. And right now, as you know, with funding in general, there's more revenue associated with students from high school that come to our campus and actually participate. There are so many dual credit courses that we can provide for them and have to provide for them. But general, if a parent says to their son Paul, I want you to go get English, chemistry, mathematics, done at the Albany County campus, you're going to go across the street over there. They do pay a tuition that brings a revenue to it. Concurrent enrollment, those enrollments that sit at the high school, though, do not come with other funding sources, and unless the state, increases its block grant appropriation to colleges and we can count those enrollments, we don't see them. And so I think you're astute in pointing out that if all we do is grow concurrent enrollment in Albany County, there's more of an expense impact than there is a revenue impact from doing that. The way all the other colleges have accommodated for that is, of course, through boards of cooperative education services, where BOCES actually generate revenue that both provide the access to the courses for students, but then also compensate the college to make it financially feasible to do that. And so I will admit that the high school population, I think, is a bit of a challenge, but we've really been pleased with the partnership and the proximity, allowing those students to come to our campus. And that actually has a bit of a positive outlook. The way we become truly, really stable back at financial solvency is we get in sync with the university and continue to support their students who may choose to utilize us for a course, a semester, whatever it is. There are a significant number of undergraduate students that for some reason or other find benefit in coming to us. It's just figuring out what to offer when, based on the changes of what the university is offering, is a challenge. But that's probably where we find the most hope for fiscal solvency, because there are tuition revenues, there are fee revenues, and of course there's state revenues that come with that.
Thank you.
Mayor Weaver, we'll lob it back over to you, and if we come up with something, we'll raise our hand. All right?
Sure, or give a holler, whichever works for the commissioners over there. Wanted to start with you folks. I appreciate that. Council, we've got some questions coming. Councilor Gabriel, I've got you up, and then I've got keep those hands up if you can, so I could do it in order. It does strike me, council members, that we didn't ask for the chair of trustees that's with us to add anything to that. And I don't know, Trustee Soto, if you wanted to, or if you want to just maybe listen along as we go through questions. I certainly have one I'd like to ask you, but I'm going to wait. Did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay. Councilmember Gabriel, let's have your question. I appreciate your patience while I was checking with the Board of Trustees member, and then we'll start going around in order. Councilmember Gabriel, you're up first.
Thanks, Mayor. And Dr. Schaefer, thank you for your presentation. Outstanding. You covered a lot of ground, and I really appreciate all of the areas that you covered. I started at LCCC 51 years ago when there were 3 buildings, and got an outstanding education out of high school. It was, just the best place for me. We had top-notch professors. It was small. I did work study, so I was able to earn some money, and then I graduated, came over to UW. And then my daughter, several years ago, took advantage from LHS, taking some courses at the Albany County campus, so another tie-in there. So I'm certainly very well adversed with LCCC, and I know the mission is very valuable to a lot of people. My question, Dr. Schaefer, to you is regarding the funding from the governor. He mentioned $27 million in federal funding through ARP funding, the Wyoming Innovation Partnership, and it talks about allocations to both UW and the community colleges in areas of energy, digital infrastructure, technology, tourism, and hospitality, this being the first phase of that partnership. I'm wondering, from your standpoint, with this kind of support from the governor, what that will mean to the Albany County campus.
It's a fantastic question, Councilman Gabriel, and thank you for the kind comments. It's great to meet alum and to hear the success that they've had, and certainly the impact that LCCC has had on them. So I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, we've come a long ways in 52 years as an institution. I would say, so I'm a big supporter as President Seidel is at the university, and we've been working closely together with the governor's office to sort of shape this Wyoming Innovation Partnership. And there's a keen interest on the governor to do 2 things. One is to encourage community colleges and university to work more purposefully, more collaboratively together, just in recognition of the fact that we can't just be our own silos unto ourselves doing our own things. We don't have the resources, and the state needs us to partner more. And then 2, he really wants us to partner on things that drive the state's economic future. And so you'll see reference to these economic sectors that we read about during the NDOW reports and things like that, really trying to help diversify the state's economy. And so this phase one portion of it, working on entrepreneurship, which I do think has some potential specifically for a university town like Laramie. But then some alternative approaches to energy, healthcare you'll see, and then you're going to see manufacturing and a few other areas really boom up from there. I don't know that I have a good answer for how that will play out with in Albany County, to be quite honest with you, for two reasons. One, there's a lot of interest in really aligning with mature emerging industries that have capacity to grow and to do that. And other than maybe manufacturing, which I think has some opportunity, possibly IT, there hasn't been a lot of conversation even from the university and what to do with Albany County. Which leads me to the other piece that I don't know is the university sort of calling the shots for Albany County and for the university campus. And I think that, if you get the chance, is a fantastic question to ask Ed Seidel to see what he thinks they may be able to do there. But the purpose of that is basically to get us to work together to drive economic activities and economic diversification. And I've had that conversation with Mr. Enzi and the Laramie Chamber Business Alliance, and trying to get a sense of what's the economic future, what's the economic plan, what's the community plan there. Because if there is a well-developed plan that's showing promise, we can align these WIP activities with it. But I'm not quite sure what that is yet.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, great. And I should say we are in phase one and just received support for phase one. Phase two of the Wyoming Innovation Partnership is going to be much larger, and we have initial proposals and conversation points in with the governor and the legislature right now. So I would say watch what the JAC does later this week, and then we'll see how that rolls through the legislature and if those funds can be allocated. But we've asked for about $100 million of ARPA funds, or funds made available as a result of the American Rescue Plan, to build out phase two. And with that will come far greater opportunity to build things. And of course, Councilman Schmeckel knows a lot about that, especially from the entrepreneurship side, because we're already working on that piece.
Councilmember Gabriel, do you have any follow-up to that last little bit of information there? No. All right. Very good. Yes, President Schaefer, much like you, there's nothing the council likes more than to monitor the joint appropriation. Do it a lot. Councilmember Schmeckel.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, President Schaefer and Trustee Soto, for joining us here this evening. I, too, am a proud Golden Eagle and very appreciative of all of the efforts that LCCC has put into our community over the years. And on to the note of economic development, I'm very pleased to announce that we have an Albany County campus student involved in this year's Southeast Wyoming Innovation Launchpad as a finalist. A fantastic idea that's going to move forward. We're looking forward to working with Travis Duvall over the next several months and having our pitch night over in Cheyenne on February 25th. Just a shameless plug in there. But I do want to kind of pivot a little bit here. As we see some of the armchair quarterbacking on why Gillette College split off from Sheridan College, we're hearing talk about maybe if Gillette College had had some representation on the Board of Trustees of Sheridan College, even in an ex officio fashion. And I'm curious, what role does Albany County play in the direction of the LCCC Board of Trustees? And is there room for improving that and improving the communication between our communities?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Schmeckel, it's a great question. So I don't want to pontificate too much about the Gillette College situation. Happy to answer questions there. I'm actually a supporter of Gillette College, and I think it was time for them to do that. At the heart, as you know, with a lot of things, government, really representation drives a lot of the conversation. And so that, I think, was one of their fundamental concerns, because there is informal representation. I'm actually proud of the Board of Trustees. Shortly after I arrived, the Board of Trustees actually wrote within their bylaws and established a permanent ex officio trustee, which is not required by state statute or even clearly, structured by state statute. But the board actually did that for a member of the Albany County campus. And for the last, 10 years, a gentleman named Butch Cadle has been serving as the Albany County campus ex officio trustee on the board of trustees, which means he's been coming to trustee meetings on a monthly basis and representing the Albany County campus. He also is sort of the glue or the for our advisory board there. So within the parameters of what we have available, I think the trustees have tried to, in good faith, put that voice of Albany County on the board. But other than enjoying the privilege of the floor, you know, that's not a voting member. It's only one person. It doesn't have that representation. I think that the easiest way, or not the easiest way, the most appropriate way to have equitable representation is actually through the annexation statutes. Campbell County simply did not want to move through annexation, where essentially you would create a larger district by annexing an adjacent county into that district. Once that's done, statute requires that there's adequate representation or representative representation on the boards by doing that. So that's a far bigger conversation, and I know it probably gives Trustee Soto some shivers when I talk about annexation, but that is the legislative mechanism that counties have to actually join a community college district and ensure that you have the representation. Unfortunately, that also comes with that wonderful T word, taxation, as well, to generate resources, and that seems to be the thing that really kept Campbell County from wanting to do that. So, you know, we can look at a lot of different ways to increase that. I generally think we have fair communication between the communities. It's identifying what that need is, where we want to go, seems to be the piece that we're always sort of grasping at.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you. We have went down this path several times. I wish that we could do something. I wish the legislatures would let us do that program, annexation or whatever you want to call it, so that we could put a mill tax in here. We did a mill tax and built the most phenomenal high school in the state with the swimming program and everything, and everybody loves it when they come here. And that mill levy is done, and I wish we could transfer it over to you, but we can't legally. So if the legislature would let us do something, I really think that Albany County, City of Laramie, and the rest of the county would love to try to help out in this, because you are such a benefit to this town. And I even proposed before we had this that we need to get you some more property for another building, but with all the things going on with the budget cuts and everything like that, I'm sure that that's probably so far out of reach it isn't even funny. But yes, I believe we should be helping you, supporting you somehow, but the legislature just ties us in knots to try to do what we'd like to do, which I feel is the right thing to do also. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Harrington, you're next. Thank you, Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, President Schaefer, I might be one of the least informed people on this call about BOCES funding, but that seems like a conversation that we should all be having. And I was wondering if you could give me maybe a quick rundown. I understand that Laramie and Albany County are maybe two of the three. Maybe there's a slightly different makeup than that aren't already leveraging some variety of mill. Is that correct? And then I guess maybe the other question that would lead to then is, if we did pursue that, maybe paint a picture of what that would look like for the Albany County branch. I think that, to me, that's the most important question. If we're collectively all going to not do the, you know, sort of like the SAFE plan, which I'm happy you all are here, also the product of a community college. But you know, if we're, I would rather see, I don't know, I guess if we're going to be sort of doubling down, I maybe would like to hear a little bit more about what that might look like in practice.
Great. Yeah. Mr. Mayor, Councilman Harrington, thank you for that. So and let me couch here's where always, when we talk about funding issues in Wyoming, it always ends up on two plates, right? It's either smaller government, let's cut things, or let's increase taxes. And I will tell you that I'll talk about the tax structure and how BOCES work or where that is. I am mostly interested in ensuring we understand what the needs of Albany County are and trying to identify what our presence there does to advance that. And so that's, a lot of these things, I'm not one that says just pour money into something without purpose. And so, that's one of the pieces I keep going back to, is trying to understand what Albany County ultimately needs from us, what the future is, where we can really double down our effort. And so, so when I talk about funding, it's with that caveat that I'm interested in that funding going to something that actually advances the community in the way that you all want it to advance. But you are correct, Councilman Harrington, that there is only one community college service area that does not have a BOCES, a Board of Cooperative Education Services, and that is the LCCC service area, Laramie and Albany County. Every other county benefits from a BOCES in some configuration. Quick BOCES 101, it's when two educational entities that basically have representation over a district come together to form a cooperative board for a very well-defined educational purpose. They actually emerged out of the Northeast, and it happened when there was lots of expectations for educational entities to provide IEPs for students with challenges and disabilities, and small districts couldn't do that, and it didn't make sense for them to do it on their own, so they would cooperate, hire somebody, a special education expert that would actually service many districts. That's sort of where they came from. In Wyoming, many of them really focus on career and technical education, focus on dual and concurrent enrollment, and have those purposes. But basically in Wyoming, the way it works is if two educational entities want to enter into a cooperative agreement, a full agreement, it has to be defined, written, approved by the State Board of Education for a purpose. They can form a board, a cooperative board. That board can make recommendations then to their respective boards to basically assess a mill, actually it's a half a mill, on the district they're responsible for. So in Albany County, if we were to create, so if the Board of Trustees were to join the Albany County School District Board in a cooperative, a BOCES, then the Albany County School District could right now assess a half a mil on the district to support the specific programming purposes defined in that agreement. We could not assess because you're not part of our district, so our Board of Trustees can't assess any type of local tax. If we did this with Laramie 1 and Laramie, then both boards could assess a half a mil, and that's what you generally see is at least 1 mil supporting that. Some BOCES have actually gone out then to the voters, and you can actually, with voter approval, add, I want to say, up to another 5 mils to do that. So for us, it would really require the school district driving it to partner with the Laramie County Community College Board of Trustees, create this board, develop a plan for what programs and services that we want to cooperatively deliver, get that approved, and then they would have basically the ability to assess a half mil on the district with just their own vote. And so for many BOCES, what they've done is they actually generate revenue to expand the amount of concurrent and dual enrollment activities. The Campbell County BOCES is really focused on career technical education, providing more of those programs in the high school and also through Gillette College. But every one is flavored slightly different. Some have early childhood education programs written into them. Some do more with adult basic ed, but that's the beauty of them. You can actually write it to align with the need of the community. But that's a school district conversation. They're the next group on my list I'll go chat with, and I know there's a lot of interest in it, but honestly, people are fearful of even if it's a permissive levy, fearful of actually assessing a tax on their communities for, I think, just fear of falling out of favor. But I mean, the tax piece is always the piece that stops these conversations.
So are we at a point, Mr. Mayor, if I could, sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you have any follow-up, go right ahead.
Thank you. So President Schaefer, we're at the point then that you are really just looking for feedback, and while we all may be, you're looking on feedback really to sort of narrow that scope, if I hear you correct, that we aren't to the BOCES phase yet, that we're at a point that we need to define what that direction is before you or the school district would request the funding, or the revenue generation, I suppose. Is there a plan? I mean, I guess I'm not sure. I mean, I'm happy that you're here, and I appreciate sort of the candid nature of the conversation. And I guess to stick with that, like, we certainly represent the residents of Laramie, but we're not people aimed at community college, right? Like, we're not people about to enroll at your college. And I'm curious if there's any sort of surveying or anything of that sort to see, what are students looking for? Because I think there probably is a notable shift. You kind of drilled on it a little bit earlier. There's a notable shift in the sort of working world right now, that it's becoming more realistic. And I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, but more realistic to move from high school or some sort of shorter trade program into a viable career. That may have a lower ceiling than if you were a PhD, but maybe not. And I think if we're so much is in flux, that I would just, I guess, be curious what students are saying that they're looking for. While I think we all have, certainly have opinions, I think that would be I'd be interested to know, I guess, is all I would say. Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councilman Harrington. And I think that's really at the heart of this, and that's maybe where you could help us most, is understanding what it is that Laramie wants for its future, for its community, and then help letting us align to that. And I know I say that a little bit tongue in cheek, because we all want everything, I think, for our communities, but understanding how we carve out that future. Students right now are utilizing us where they see a well-defined opportunity. So they see an affordable path to get prerequisites before they go to the university or they apply to a nursing program. The high school students see it as a great way to do general education courses in their senior year by coming over and doing that. Beyond that, honestly, there are small pockets of individuals in Laramie who are sort of career focused and oriented. The problem we run into is it is almost impossible to find one of those pockets that would result in 10 to 15 students in the same programmatic area every year that we can actually get into a career in Laramie. And it's just it's a function of size and numbers. And not that we're opposed to loss leader programs where we start to build a workforce, predicated on the belief that it'll drive an economic engine over there. I'm just not sure what those are. And again, without sounding like I'm being critical of the fine folks across the hill from where I sit now, it's hard to narrow down. Is that IT? Is that cyber? Is it unmanned aircrafts? Is it manufacturing? Is it healthcare? Is it, and every time we look to start some of those programs up, we go through this vetting process, and it's hard to really make them pencil. And so so we've done environmental scanning over there, we've done surveying, we've met with employers, we've worked with the LCBA, we've done all those things, and it's real hard to say, these are the 3 things we know we can stand up because this is where we're going to get support and this is where we're going to go. And maybe we're not at that point, and I think it's okay that if one of the answers here is there really isn't a need for this beyond what this scope is, so let's not try to make it something it's not, or let's recognize that it may be better for all to not have it over there. I think that just has to be one of the candid conversations we have to have.
Okay. I am temporarily blocked, so whoever's next. Go ahead.
This is Councilor Adari. May I go?
Yes.
I personally would like to see more training in the construction trades. I know that contractors are always short of labor, and I think Councilor Pierce was telling me about the school that she went to, or that her brother went to, that had those programs. Maybe she could describe that better than I could. And also Laramie is trying to achieve carbon neutrality, and I would love to see more people that know the importance of insulating, ways to insulate houses so that we're not spending so much, money on throwing energy out the window. So that would be my personal preference. Like, I don't really have my finger on the pulse necessarily, but I do know that construction trades are often needing labor, and I was hoping Vice Mayor Pierce would tell us a little about the program she described to me. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Pierce, that sounds like you were put on the spot. Are you prepared to speak to that right now, or should we let President Schaefer respond to that?
So just very quickly, I'm a Wisconsin kid, so it's not a local program, and I don't even know if it's still going on anymore. But when my brother went through high school, by the time he graduated from high school, he was able to build a garage and had real hands-on experience in the construction business, and has since spent 50 some odd years in the construction business. So I think Councilor O'Doherty was just, excited about the possibility of a trade actually coming out of a high school, potentially moving and getting some skills, within a community college and moving into a career, so that he spent his lifetime in and will be retiring probably before me. So that was that program, a number of years ago. So, but certainly hasn't lost its need or its calling.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. I appreciate that. And hopefully you're a recovering Green Bay Packer fan and you've made that shift. I've got quite a few of those on my campus, unfortunately. And I'm a Minnesota boy where I was born, so I'm a Vikings fan. But what you just described is exactly the type of conversation and program that a BOCES could be designed for. So we're doing it in automotive tech in Laramie High right now, where they actually go through a series of courses and actually complete industry credentials as well as a college credential. And they are essentially job ready when they leave to enter into the automotive area. If we wanted to stand up, or if Laramie saw the need to stand up a construction or a trades or an industrial management type of program at the high school, to specifically do that, so when they graduate they have the credentials, the industry credentials. Those are the things that BOCES write very specifically into their plans and say, this is what we're funding and this is what we're doing. And I think there's some opportunity to do that, and not just in construction but some of the other areas. Actually, Councilor Doherty, the idea of this carbon neutrality and what we could be doing in alternative energy in the high schools is actually a ripe area to explore. So there are mechanisms in which we could explore that. I will tell you, generally, when we stand up certificate programs, if it's not an apprenticeship structure, it is incredibly difficult to get students to enroll. And it's just because the employers are scrambling. They'll take anybody and they need them producing on site. And so this is sort of that conflict where they want a higher caliber workforce, but they need to fill jobs right now. So they're taking people, and there's just not that space always for education. So I think apprenticeship has some opportunity. And actually, I'll share with you, I think we are the only active manufacturing apprenticeship right now in the state of Wyoming is the Albany County campus in Laramie right now, with high-vis and possibly tungsten, I think. So there are some models we could explore that may help us do that.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, I think you maybe need to take control.
See them. Mr. Mayor's dropped off.
Okay, Councilor Cumby.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Pierce. President Schaefer, thank you very much for your presentation. And I'm just wondering about, I'm sure you all have discussed shifting from a focus on college preparation to possibly the development of a more robust associate degree program where we are producing technician level individuals who leave with an associate degree in for instance, computer and information technology, renewable energy, which is something that's definitely going to be needed. We have 2 major solar energy projects going through the approval process: hospitality and tourism, business, accounting, early childhood education. If some of this funding goes through and we change the school system, we're definitely going to need people who don't necessarily have a 4-year degree, but have an associate degree and can move into some of those positions. So I'm wondering how you all have considered that and what your thoughts on that are. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Cumby. So I think it's a fantastic question. I always tell my folks that I get mad when they say we've been there, done that, we've tried that. So feel free to chastise me for saying that now. Honestly, one of our challenges. So we have offered business degrees, accounting degrees, certificates, IT credentials through the Albany County campus. A series of programs intended to do just that. And while there are opportunities in general, it's just this model that just never pencils. So generally, we end up running classes with 3 to 5 students. They don't pencil, they don't generate enough revenue. There's no funding to do that. And then once they graduate, trying to keep them in Laramie and ensuring they have jobs in Laramie and they don't get sucked to the Front Range of Colorado or to Casper or to Cheyenne has been our challenge. And so what I would say is right now, and this is what I mean when I say that the economy over there doesn't have critical mass in an area where there is an effective model to stand up programs. And it becomes even more challenging if you remember that quadrant graph I showed you in sort of those 3 areas. Trying to compete with the business programs at the university. We had some early success on some of the hospitality things and that kind of, now the business college, I believe, is standing up some of the programs. So it's been hard to carve out that niche that generates enough enrollments to actually make it financially viable to offer. So we end up canceling classes or running them under enrolled and eventually having to move out of those programs. So I don't disagree with you. I think this state and this region could use more, actually just more post-secondary prepared or educated or trained individuals. We just can't get critical mass around those programs. And so other than exploring which might be unique to try sort of an interdisciplinary program approach, it's really been hard to stand up a program that actually can survive on its own. And then enter online learning, where you start looking at the model where I can offer those same courses out of Cheyenne and enroll people from basically from Rock River all the way over to Pine Bluffs. That model, makes a whole lot more sense, but it doesn't necessarily require having that presence right in Laramie, and that's been kind of the piece we've been navigating with. So I agree with you. I guess I've become skeptical to think that we can get those programs to be viable because there just hasn't been enough folks in Laramie to enroll in them, to be honest.
Thank you, President Schaefer. I'm just curious when those attempts were, and if it's possible that you were ahead of your time and that maybe times have caught up with that.
Fair enough, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Cumby. You may very well be right that we were ahead of our time, and we have seen a substantial shift in sort of the focus on community college and technical training. In fact, with even some of our youngest students who used to be sort of predominantly focused, for university bound. So I'm open to that, and that's where I'm interested in seeing the economic development plans and goals in the community. And if there's something where we're saying we've got these projects and we know there's an economic opportunity here, we're not opposed to thinking about investing in a program that might get us there, even if we have to be a little bit of a loss leader. Just historically, it's created financial challenges. If the state would keep funding us, honestly, there's more opportunity for that, but now we're at that point of what do you fund and what don't you fund? Great questions on feedback.
Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We got our city manager on the call, Janine Jordan, and all of us have done some work, and we have hired some outside consultants regarding our economic development issues in Laramie and where we do have some opportunities. And I'm wondering if City Manager Jordan or President Schaefer, if you have seen any of our work and previous plans regarding our economic development strategies or things we're talking about, and we would certainly be willing to share, that information with you if you haven't seen it already.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, and I'd love to hear from Janine. She's been such a great partner with us over the years. So I'm familiar with, I believe it's called Thrive. Laramie was the recent one, and we've explored that. And then there was an iteration before that that Dan Furphy, Senator Furphy, has really helped us with. So I have some of that history to do that. I don't have a lot of detail beyond the plans that I've seen, and I know that Dr. Hammond, when he was at our Albany County campus, was involved with some of that. So he tried to clue us into some of the operational plans. I just don't know how well or what the direction from operation will be, but that's the type of stuff that we need to hear. So this is what we're doing with that plan and where we're going. But so I've got a cursory awareness of Thrive Laramie, I think it's called.
Okay, well, maybe we can delve a little deeper into some of those findings, not necessarily this evening, obviously, but maybe at a later date, just to give you a little more information.
And Mr. Mayor and Madam Vice Mayor, if your city manager would be willing to do that, I'd love to come over with some folks and just sit down with her and kind of walk through that. And as I said, I've done that a little bit with Mr. Enzi, but I'd love to hear from the city's perspective too.
Yeah, and maybe we can even get Thrive to show up electronically and kind of walk us through some of that stuff. So, like I said, at a future date. So.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and Councilor Cumbie. Also, thank you for your comments just a minute ago. The Vice Mayor did open up the discussion to see if the city manager wanted to add anything. I don't know that she does, but we do like to see if there's something that's been generated in the conversation so far that the city manager might want to make a comment towards. City manager, you certainly don't need to, but if you'd like to, here's an opportunity right now.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I would add is I certainly would be happy to sit down with El Trip again, but I would remind the council that we are actually kind of waiting for the pandemic to play out. As you know, it was a goal of the council this year to take another look at Thrive because we completed that plan literally months before the pandemic started, and we understand that the pandemic may be shaping the economy and local needs in a way that we did not anticipate. So President Schaefer, maybe that's something that we also look at because we could certainly tailor some of our investigation when we open that plan back up here, probably in the next 6 months, I would guess, to try to center around emerging industries. And of course, we did that in the first iteration, but taking into account that things may have changed now some 2 years later in a post-COVID world.
Or at least what we hope will eventually be a post-COVID world. So Trustee Soto with me there too. I think we're all just, frankly, feeling continuously buffeted by events beyond our control that affect our ability to do any long-range planning. Thank you, City Manager. Good points. City Council, some other questions?
Mayor Weaver. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Commissioner Rivera has a question or two.
Thank you. Trustee Soto, I'm going to put you on the spot. I haven't heard this directly approached tonight. I wanted to know, do the trustees generally support keeping this campus open, or do they see it as a pain over the hill? And has seen its time and all. I haven't heard any remark directly of any support from the trustees.
Mr. Mayor, County Commissioners, yes, the Board of Trustees is supportive of the Albany County campus. We don't we want to continue to be a part of the community over there if it's possible for us to do that. So hopefully that answers your question. I think all of the trustees would agree with that it's part of the reason we wanted to have these conversations. Also, Trustee Cadle, our ex officio trustee from the Albany County campus, he has put a lot of energy into his work with us. I think we all have a great deal of respect for him and listen to him. And he's put quite a bit of effort into trying to get a BOCES started. So the short answer is yes, we support the Albany County campus.
Thank you.
Mayor Weaver, President Schaefer or Trustee Soto, are there places that are doing community college differently than the traditional model? And are there infrastructure things that a community needs to do to move that along? For instance, if there was broadband readily accessible in their downtown area, that seems to have worked pretty well in Lincoln, Nebraska. Are there places that the community college expansion was built off infrastructure build, or could you just supply a little bit more to that?
Commissioner Gosar, that's, an interesting question. So what I would tell you is I think just like the conversation you just had, community colleges across the nation, I was just on a meeting with about 20 of them today. We're all trying to rethink how we function, how we work, and what we do, sort of post-pandemic or in light of what we've learned with the pandemic. And I think there are some unique models and things that are emerging. So a few that have been in existence that have some legs are middle colleges structure, where you actually bridge the last 2 years of high school and the first 2 years of college that have become focused on key industries, IT, some are academic prep, some are trades related, but actually sort of overlapping what people will lament as the lost senior year and sort of focusing on a more successful first year in college. So the middle college structure, I don't know that it's a super new idea, but we're seeing more and more of that as we see this blending of career and occupational pathways with secondary and post-secondary is one thing that we're doing. There's this whole world of earn and learn, really trying to rethink the old school apprenticeship model, but trying to think about how you intersect with work and help students actually earn and advance. And Wyoming has some ripe opportunity there. And then I'll tell you the piece that is, Councilman Schmeckel knows, entrepreneurship and thinking creatively about how we help people become successful businessmen and women and grow enterprises here as a grassroots is probably the place that Wyoming has the most opportunity. It's not as sexy as business attraction. It's not usually as immediately sort of that big headline move. But one of the things that I think is worth exploring is really thinking about how we work with people that are already here to help them cultivate, grow, and ultimately launch ideas that lead to small businesses and big businesses. So when you think about cooperative working spaces, learning spaces, that to me ties well with community college entrepreneurship and what we can do just in general for business starts. That would be something I would love to see much more of that in Laramie. I'd love to see more economic activity tied to research from the university. I'd love to see more Kickstart programs or launch programs. I'd love to see more opportunities to work with innovators and people with ideas in the downtown setting. I could ramble for hours, and Fred's heard me do that. But that, to me, is one of those innovative spaces we probably need to be exploring more purposefully in Wyoming, but perhaps there in Laramie. That's a university program there, so I have to tread lightly with how much I insert ourselves, but I think there's room for all of us.
And then the follow-up would be, what seems to be the obstacle while working more closely with UW is just getting that meeting, or what is an obstacle? Oh boy,
that's a good question, Commissioner Gosar, what I would say our biggest obstacle has honestly been knowing who to work with and ensuring that that person is still there when we go on. So, just like everything in our world, it's about relationships, right? That's how we get things done. And so having that relationship building and having the ability to do that has been one of our biggest challenges. There are times when the university, and I'm treading lightly here because I know that Madam Vice Mayor has been a big supporter of ours and happens to have a relationship with the university. There are times where the university really wants us and relies on us, and then we start moving down there, and then all of a sudden the university would rather either redirect that attention or sometimes pull back. Part of that honestly has been my fault, I think, with the structure of the leadership of the Albany County campus and my interest. I've been spending far too much time in Old Main when I should be working with department chairs and perhaps deans and other folks, because that seems to be where a lot of the decisions are making. So knowing who to work with and knowing what the direction is going has been sort of the bigger challenge. Generally, everybody's receptive. They want to work together, but we're all consumed with what's in front of us. And it's been hard to find that clarity, to be honest. And so, Madam Vice Mayor, I hope I didn't offend you by saying any of that. But I know you've been a wonderful partner, both in your role here and your role in the university.
Thank you. I'm not the only UW person in our virtual room here, so so that's fine. Thank you.
And Mayor Weaver, Commissioner Ibarra has a question or two left, and I'm done.
Thank you. President Schaefer, along that same line, where has your roadblock been with school district? Is it with the Board of Education, or is it at an administrative level? As a former member of the school board here, I'm familiar with some of the members who are still on that board when I was present, and I'd be happy to approach them. I just want to know, where is the roadblock? Is it at the administrative level, at the Board of Trustees level?
Commissioner Ibarra, thank you for putting me on the spot so wonderfully tonight with this. What I can tell you, so here's where it gets tricky. So when it comes to roadblocks, it's generally brought up with the concept that we want to accomplish something, and other partners that we need to accomplish it don't necessarily feel the same desire to do so. And so if there was a roadblock, I would say that it's perhaps the misalignment of what the priorities are, the interests are between the groups. So I think if you were to sit down with any of the members of the school board, and like I said, they'll be the next group that I go to. If you were to sit down with the Superintendent Yanni, we all want to provide robust educational opportunities that open up doors for our students and hopefully come back to benefit the community. There is no disagreement there. What exactly those look like and who exactly pays for them and who exactly owns them, I think is where we end up running into the challenge. And we seem to peter out in finding enough motivation and interest to get it to go to the next level. And that's where honestly we test the question of, is there really a need or an interest there? Because if there isn't that motivation, maybe we're trying to create something that nobody really wants. So it's probably that lack of, we want to accomplish this, we know we can do this together, here's the path. Generally where we end up is, let's have a conversation, we all agree these are really important things and we want to provide more opportunities. And then we get to the next step, so here's what we should do, and it just kind of fizzles out because there either isn't a champion or there ultimately isn't the will to take it to that next level. And so we found our most success, to be honest, Commissioner, working with the counselors and the teachers at the school district, or at Laramie High. But they only have so much authority and can only move so far as well.
Yes, and maybe the follow-up is Councilman Harrington's suggestion that there might be a survey done to see what it is that the students are wanting, and that might put some leverage onto these counselors and teachers that are representing their schools to bring forth to the school board or to the superintendent.
Commissioner Ibarra, I would say the parents in that as well, really understanding what they want for their children.
Thank you, President Schaefer.
All right. Other questions? Councilmember Gabriel. Councilmember Gabriel.
Thanks, Mayor. President Schaefer or Trustee Soto, I was just curious, is there any kind of timeline that's been discussed between board members on getting this resolved? Because I know that you're talking about, frustration. You're not going to get enough people into these programs right away, and you want to keep, moving along as best possible. But is there, you come to a certain timeline and say, hey, we gotta do something different, or we're going to have to move on?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Gabriel, and Trustee Soto may have some comments on this. In general, I think the expectation the board has given to me is to stabilize the campus, find a way to minimize the financial impact given what we experience, and to essentially come up with a plan. And so we are halfway through our fiscal year. And so my goal to the board is to have it stabilized, but then have some type of definitive plan as we think about the budget for next year and beyond. And so short term, we're looking at the next 6 months to come up with some decisions about what the ACC looks like here in the near term. Now, whether that looks like an exit strategy over the next two or 3 years, because it would take time, or a substantial shift, I think that's gonna have to play out over the next couple of years. But what I owe to the board is essentially a path that will help us with the start of next fiscal year. So 6 months really to decide the direction we're going, and then depending on the direction we decide to go, that may be a year or two, or maybe 5 years. I don't know, Madam Chair, Trustee Soto, if you want to make any additional comments.
I don't. I think that's sort of what the expectation is and what the plan is.
Councilmember O'Doherty.
I'm curious about that annexation to your district, but I thought I heard Senator Rathfuss say that districts would have to be dissolved and reformed for that to happen. Because to me that seems like the easy thing. We're part of that district. Your hands are tied, and that part of your district can't pay their share. The annexation seems to me the most reasonable approach. Is that something that we need a ballot initiative, or am I asking the wrong people? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Doherty, no. So here's the trick. Nobody's ever tried it in Wyoming. There is an annexation statute that sort of dictates how that works. And I'd be happy at another time. I don't want to keep you longer than necessary tonight. I'd be happy to walk you through that. When we went through the Wyotech closure process, and we were looking at acquiring Wyotech, that led us into some research and exploration around annexation. But there is a path to do it. Nobody's tried it, and our assessment at that time from a legal lens was that the statutes are going to be a little bit cumbersome. But there is actually a path and there's a couple of ways to get the initiative. But in short, it would require either the county commissioners, or by petition, so many members of Albany County, so many residents, to actually ask to have the annexation on the ballot. The statute spells out what the ballot has to say specifically. If it were to pass, the Albany County would be immediately annexed with Laramie County, and the district would then become an Albany-Laramie County district. It triggers an immediate, I think, re-election. I don't remember, Trustee Soto, but you actually have to go through sort of a re-election, and based on the population proportions, it would assign, or you would elect essentially 2 trustees from Albany County that would then become part of the board. And then through some mechanism, two existing members of the board would actually come off. The statutes really don't describe how that works. But with that, then Albany County would then be required to assess the 4 mills on the county to pay for their portion of the programming. But then you have representative voice as well as resources that are directed right back to programming and services in Albany County. So that's a real brush of the process. It's far more complicated, but there is a path to do that. It's just a little bit convoluted and cumbersome there.
And like you said, you want to know that there's a need. I can see that there's so many outside factors that you described, that you have all the other partners do something else, and so now that you're stuck. So yeah, I would hate to lose the Albany County campus, but I also understand that if you keep having to chase this moving target, that it's not very realistic. I mean, anyway, thank you.
Yep, I agree. We know all too well that one thing voters and taxpayers, what gets their ire up is when they're paying taxes that go to something that isn't being utilized for a purpose or for a need. And so before you would ask people to do that, it's got to be clear what they're going to receive in terms of that benefit. Mr. Mayor.
Schaefer.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think you have other business to attend to, and I've appreciated so much the time that you've actually allotted to this. I'm happy to answer other questions. I'm also happy to cease and desist and then engage in any further dialogue that the council or the commission would feel beneficial.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. President, I'm not quite ready to let you off the hook because I haven't asked you any questions just yet.
I'm here.
And I have some.
Please.
And I think my first question was already asked and clarified by Councilmember Harrington, which is that I think what you were looking for here was some general thoughts and feedback from the city council and the county commissioners as local elected officials and partners in sort of in civic governance. So what I would first like to ask you along with that is, do you feel that you've received some of the feedback you were looking for through this work session? Is there anything that you would have been hoping to hear as part of this discussion that you haven't yet? Or any particular line of discussion that we haven't touched on yet?
No, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe so. I mean, ultimately, the big threshold I wanted to get was a read on, if you were to quickly say, yeah, maybe there's not a need for you there, that would be a signal for me to say, okay, to the board, that there doesn't seem to be, but there seems to be interest and commitment and support for having a presence of the Albany County campus there. So that's one of the things I'm really trying to test with folks. Two, I'm trying to find what are the things I haven't done my research on or that I need to explore more that we may just be missing. And so I appreciate the Vice Mayor bringing up Thrive Laramie and maybe the opportunity to revisit that as a way to do it. So that's helpful for us as well. But then you're also validating in some ways what we're hearing, which is, and again, I'm trying to couch this in a way that doesn't seem that it's insulting, but I think a lot of the communities in Wyoming, and Cheyenne's the same way, we're still trying to figure out what we want to do and what we want to be. And so, it doesn't yet seem that we've got that clear direction yet that really would help us align to where we're going. And so I would say the feedback has been either conforming or helping me understand where I need to explore and look more. So I actually feel very pleased with the dialogue and the questions.
All right. I just wanted to make sure that we're scheduling being what it is for everybody, that we were getting at some of the things or the majority of what we wanted to accomplish here. I'm going to share a couple of thoughts on this with you from my perspective, which is possibly unique here on the council. And I've been fortunate to have what I would call an amazing opportunity to work as an adjunct on and off for the ACC campus over here, and I've really, really enjoyed it. And I can tell you that one of the things that the students there, when I would talk to them, consistently touched on was just the value that they saw in being able to have the campus as a resource, to be able to take those classes to fit in because UW wasn't offering them when they needed to take them. and offered them at times or through a schedule that wasn't available in the way that UW had packaged it for them. And that I can share with you, and I'm sure it comes as no surprise, had a tremendous value for those students. And I'd also like to just give just a shout out for the staff and the folks that you have working there at the ACC campus. Really great people that I really enjoyed meeting and working with, even just briefly as one of your adjuncts. Very student-oriented, very student service-oriented. Another thing I'd like to bring to your attention that I see filling a very important niche is the GED Testing Center, and how that provided a very important avenue for further education for a lot of students that I worked with in a program that was going on for a little while through the alternative high school, helping students that had essentially closed out their traditional high school education path, that did want to continue, but weren't going to be able to go back, did not want to go back and repeat a senior year or something like that, were able to utilize that GED program and then transition to college courses through the Albany County campus without having to relocate to Cheyenne and start their post-high school education that way, in a transition that made them feel supported, comfortable. They could stay here in Laramie. They weren't necessarily ready or able to go to the University of Wyoming right away, and they wanted to use LCCC through the local campus as a bridge to that, the incredible value that had to some students that I worked with. I think one of the problems that it seems like you've mentioned to us, and that I think we've identified tonight in our conversation, is that I don't know that it's that the needs aren't obvious, or that we're not aware, at least some of the needs, that the critical mass that you mentioned isn't there. It seems like there's a lot of important puzzle pieces that the Albany County campus provides, but it doesn't necessarily do it in large numbers that solve some of the fiscal problems for the operation of the campus. And that's a challenge. There's lots of very important things that the campus does, but it doesn't do them at the volume that solves those challenges. And I think that might be something to bring into this discussion. You know, yet another complexity to bring into the discussion, but I think that's part of what's going on here, is that there are important things that the campus does, but the numbers need to increase, or there needs to be another solution identified. Speaking to something that I think we've talked a lot about tonight, to me it really seems like the BOCES option needs to be pursued. We need to discuss that. We need to talk about the importance of that in solidifying the future of the Albany County campus for us in the community. And I think that possibly would be at least part of the solution to helping solve that problem of continuing to provide all those important services, even though sometimes the numbers aren't going to be as high as they would need to be otherwise. But perhaps the BOCES would provide an avenue to do just that. And I think you might find some members of the school board, although I don't know, but I would think you'd find some members of the school board that would see some value in things like those bridge type programs that could be offered through GED offerings and things like that, between people that weren't able to finish the traditional path but still wanted to go on. They get the GED, they begin taking some college courses through LCCC, and then perhaps go on to UW, or perhaps go on to another program. That's a really key function, I think. And I think it could be expanded on, but again, resources, dollars, and the numbers of students that you have involved. I understand all those things are very important. But I just wanted to kind of outline for you those things that I can speak to from personal experience and the importance that they have. Certainly, I think people on this council recognize that, and recognize how valuable having this campus here is.
But Mr. Mayor,
yes,
just to reiterate, I mean, you brought up a good point, and a simple model. So without a doubt, our number one conversation, it seems like, with our Albany County campus activities is generally the inability to hit a threshold of activity that generates enough in revenue to be able to run it. So course enrollment sizes, having enough revenue to have the overhead revenue to actually support those ancillary services that aren't revenue generators in and of themselves. So your comment about scale is precisely it. When we can't hit scale, tuition and state funding generates enough to run the activities that without a doubt, I agree. I mean, what we love about it, that has great value to students and to the community, but they don't pencil financially. That is the crux of, I would say, 90% of our conversations that are the challenges at the Albany County campus is critical mass with enough revenue to actually support those activities without having substantial subsidy that has to come from somewhere else, with the, redirecting state funds that would otherwise go to the Cheyenne campus. Or of course, as I said, we can't redirect local funds with it. But that, what you said was an important point, and I would say the vast majority of our challenges usually come around to not hitting capacity marks to make the things we do there financially viable.
Yes. And I think I'll go ahead and wrap it up. I mean, I have lots of other thoughts, but they don't all have to be addressed this evening. But I wanted to share some of the observations with you, having had some extensive involvement with the campus and the school district at the same time, and through some other, avenues. But I think it's that some of the need is well known. It's that it just doesn't have that volume, and that's the shame of it. But maybe that gives an important launch pad for trying to find ways to solve that. Need is there, scale is the challenge. Anyway, I really appreciate this discussion tonight and your time and being here, and hopefully we'll have some more conversations about it. I'm going to say it again. Seems like the BOCES piece of this is incredibly important, and I don't know to what extent the City Council can be supportive going forward. We're not going to make the decisions about that, but I think folks here, because of what they do outside of their services on the City Council, understand some of the need and some of the importance of those decisions in that conversation. So maybe we can just leave it there. I appreciate you giving me this 5 to 10 minutes here. I tend to get a little rambly, but I think it's an important topic. So I don't think we have anything else to add. I don't see anybody else popping a hand up. Maybe we should check and see if folks that are here in the attendees portion, yes, and we'll go to Trustee Soto. Nobody else is popping a hand up, so let's go to Chair Soto, please. I saw you raise a hand, so I assumed you were looking for recognition.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and council members, county commissioners, I just want to say how much I appreciate you're giving us the opportunity to have these conversations with all of you. I certainly hear a lot of great ideas, and the other thing that I hear that is helpful for me, and I know will be for the other trustees, is that there is an interest to help us find a solution or a path to keeping the ACC open. So I want to thank you all very much for your time and for your thoughts and ideas in sort of helping us work through this problem. So thank you.
You're of course welcome, and appreciate that comment very much. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that Laramie is invested in the Albany County campus, and we want to be partners in every way that we can. Absolutely.
And Mr. Mayor, as we wrap up, what I'd be happy to commit to, as I said, I'll be trying to schedule a time before the school board. I do plan on actually having a meeting with the Albany County delegation there at the Albany County campus in preparation of the legislative session. I'd be happy to extend those times when they're going to be through your city manager or to the county commission, and would appreciate your participation, even involvement in any of those. So I will keep you informed as the conversations and activities continue, and if there are opportunities that you see that we should be at, if you would extend them our way, we will have that presence to continue the dialogue. We just appreciate the time and the investment that you have in the Albany County campus and our presence there in Laramie.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here this evening. Commissioner Gosar, I'll toss it over to you just for any closing thoughts over there.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you, Mayor Reaver, Chairperson Soto, President Schaefer, and members of the City Council. Really do appreciate sitting in and being able to listen to this important conversation. Education is always important, and although it might change and might be incredibly different in the next 20 years than when we were all trained, I think there's an opportunity to do something and do something creative and innovative, and I hope we'll be able to do that. I really do appreciate you guys. Wendy, it's always good seeing you. I haven't seen you in some time. And President Schaefer, good to see you all. Thank you so much for the conversation. And thanks, Mayor Weaver. Appreciate you running the meeting.
We'll talk more. We'll talk more in the future. And we appreciate very much this work session this evening. Thank you so much. Council members, as we go on to the other sections of our agenda, well, I suppose we should say good evening to the commissioners, and of course thank you. We always like having these joint meetings with you guys. Good, we like it. Thank you for being with us.
With that, Dave.
Let's see if we have any public comment on anything. Earlier, when I had looked at the list of attendees, what I saw were attendees, council members that were here for our work session, as opposed to names that I might recognize being here to make general public comment. So we'll check. We have. Well, let's put the new boomerang reporter on the spot and say thanks for being here, and we're glad that there's a new reporter on the city beat, and good to see you here paying attention to our meetings, and we look forward to seeing the stories. And at the risk of speaking for others, feel free to reach out to us for questions and clarification on things that you hear in the meetings. We're always available, and welcome. And I don't see any other non-agenda related attendees, council members. So let's go now to the other sections of our agenda, and we'll go to City Council updates. What do you say, Councilmember Harrington?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just had a quick update for you all. The United Way has convened a group that they're calling Collective Impact, that is really focused on the sort of social determinants of health in a broad sense, and really putting together all of the what are effectively our community partners, but nonprofits throughout the community and other sort of do-gooders, to sort of like collectively address those social determinants of health to try and improve the quality of life of the residents of Albany County. To start down that path, they decided to pick basically one avenue to put the energy, rather than sort of split the group up and head in 6 directions, and have spent 5 or 6 months working on this, having conversations, really drilling deep into what would be that path forward. And in what I'll say was a bit of a surprising vote, from my point of view, that the 3 final contenders were mental health, access to healthcare, and affordable housing. And in the part that surprised me was the margin of the vote. The group selected affordable housing. So I think you will likely, us as a body will likely hear from this group in some way, in the coming months, in the coming year at some point, trying to define, they're early on, they did this on Friday, maybe they selected affordable housing. So they will be plugging in with some pieces of the city, but I think more than anything, I think it really reiterates the work and reinforces the work that we're all doing, and the immediacy of the affordable housing problem in the city of Laramie. So I just wanted to share that with you all. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
I appreciate that, Councilmember Harrington. Other updates? Councilmember Schmeckel, and then we'll go to Councilmember Gabriel. Councilmember Schmeckel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to report that the Laramie Rifle Range has an open community day on December 26th. So if you have that family member that won't stop quoting A Christmas Story, you can send them out to the rifle range and take care of that problem right away. So.
Okay, that's great. Councilmember Gabriel.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a good one, Fred. I just wanted to report that Councilor Schmeckel and myself appeared before Leadership Laramie a couple of weeks ago for about an hour. And we talked city council business, answered a bunch of questions, and it was very, very informative from, my standpoint on what the public was thinking about. And it was really a very positive experience, and maybe Fred would like to add a little bit more. But then afterwards, City Manager Jordan showed up for our presentation, which I stayed for, and I learned a tremendous amount about the city that you think you know about. And she had handouts for everybody and financial, the way the finances work and all this and that. It was very, very well done by the city manager, and I commend Janine for her presentation as well. But it was really a very good experience for everybody, I think, and I appreciated the opportunity to speak before Leadership Laramie. Thank you.
Thank you both for representing the Council of Leadership Laramie. That's great. Councilmember Schuster.
Thank
Thank you very much. I will add a little bit. I don't know why I have an echo, because my computer is turned off.
Sounds okay. It sounds okay, Councilmember Schuster, on my end. I'm not hearing a heavy echo.
Okay,
Come back.
Councilmember Schuster, you were doing great before, but when you got up and moved, everything went to hell on us, and the echo came on strong. So, yes. Thank you, Councilmember Schuster. Vice Mayor Pierce.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Planning Commission met last night, and the commission approved Tom Metamore to be the liaison to USAC, and also approved a variance for occupancy in one of our newly constructed residents in Laramie. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Gabriel, that did remind me. I understand that we have reappointments to the Parks and Recreation Board. There were 3 openings, 3 applicants, and all 3 applicants were members that were seeking reappointment, correct?
That is correct.
All right. I appreciate folks' willingness to serve on those boards and commissions. Other updates,
We're still looking for members on the tourism board.
Worth mentioning. We got to get some people on that tourism board. Council members. I don't know anybody. Oh, city clerk.
Currently, we have 2 applications in, so we're making progress.
All right. We'd like to get that one filled out, and hopefully we can get that 3rd member. That's an important group, and they get to work with Councilmember Gabriel, which is okay. Councilmember O'Doherty.
We met with the, I put my hand up at the wrong. We met with the Stantec about the aquifer protection plan with Commissioner Ibarra, and I think we were just waiting for the I's to be dotted and the T's to be crossed on that contract, and so they'll be getting to work now. I understand they have it, but we showed them more resources, the information that's already been gathered about the aquifer, various things from the county and the city and the Albany County or clean water advocates or whatever. So, and then the traffic commission met on Thursday and mostly just heard about the things going on with handicapped parking spaces and striping on the 12th and Harney intersection. And then we also talked about the scooters. The Traffic Safety Commission, of course, is very interested in the scooters, and I pointed out that, well, Brooks was at the meetings, right? So he showed that it's in our packet from last week when we approved extending the memorandum of understanding for the bird scooters till December of next year. In that packet, you'll see it was on our consent agenda, so people may not have concentrated on that. There's a heat map there that shows where the scooters have been used and some of the statistics, and so it's pretty informative. And members of the Traffic Commission were interested in that as it relates to bicycle routes too, because you could see Garfield was used a lot by scooters. I think that's all I have to add. I met with the ad hoc committee with the university and the county and the city about climate action plan, and things are going great guns. It's just a lot of gathering information to get all that institutional knowledge together so we can see what's been done and maybe what was ahead of its time, Councillor Cumby. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Doherty. Just as a matter of personal observation, it has appeared to me that the scooter program has been popular and well used by Laramie population. So I think it was good that we went ahead and gave them another year, and we'll see if it continues to be useful. Other updates. Do we have anybody that can give an update about Laramie Youth Council? Councilmember O'Doherty, would you like to? Or Councilmember Harrington? I thought you might be busy with future Youth Council member Ruby Harrington, but if either one of you or both of you would like to give an update about Youth Council, I don't know that we've had one lately.
Mr. Mayor, I'm at work, so Ruby's in bed at home, so free for the time being. They met, I don't know, a week ago or so. I didn't update you because they didn't have a quorum. So they heard a presentation from the wastewater treatment plant folks, and I think there was some interest in taking a tour at some point, but they weren't able to have, they didn't have a quorum, so they took no actions. So they're still considering sort of like pitches and projects and things like that, but haven't had a quorum, and have had sort of other school activities really pulling a lot of members away. So
I appreciate that. And I think we all understand that. A lot of those youth council members are very busy students that have a lot of things going on. They're juggling a lot of things. We'll hear from them. For those of you that have been going to their meetings and working with them, we appreciate it. Any other input from the council? Okay. Let me give you all a quick update about the working group for police and community, and the city manager's here, and she may want to add something to this if I forget. That committee is nearing the end of its work. We'll be having a meeting tomorrow. They will be shortly processing and submitting their recommendations to us. They have requested that the two co-chairs of the committee have requested a time to present along with those recommendations to the city council sometime in January. I represented to them that we would be able to find a time to schedule that meeting when we reach that point in the process. But that part of the committee's work is wrapping up over the next, I think, 2 weeks. Councilor Cumby, is that right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is my understanding as well.
So we'll be receiving those recommendations along with the presentation from their co-chairs. The co-chairs being Tracy Rosalind and Mitch Cushman. City manager, my guess is and my hope is that we will be able to accommodate that requested meeting in January. I don't know if it's something that we can add into a work session or if we may need to do an additional meeting schedule. Would you like to weigh in on that with council at this point?
Mayor, I'll just let you know, I believe your schedule is full in January with the exception of, I think, the 11th of January, and the deputy clerk can correct me. I'm concerned that the 11th of January is too soon for the working group, and so I thought it was more likely that they could be in front of you all at your first work session in February, if that's acceptable.
Council members? So that's something that we will, you're good. I see the thumbs. That's something that your council representatives on the working group will discuss and work out with the committee and the co-chairs. Thank you, city manager. Comments? Council comments on topics? Appreciated the work session this evening. It was good to hear from Trustee Chair Soto and President Schaefer on our work session topic tonight. It's a good discussion. I really appreciate all the questions that everybody had. And I enjoy the fear inspired by the Vice Mayor with President Schaefer. He seemed to be very concerned that he was going to say something that bothered the Vice Mayor, which I don't know where he was coming from, but he was certainly concerned, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, obviously my reputation precedes me because I had no idea that he even knew who I was. So.
The iron fist of the city council, Vice Mayor Pierce.
Right.
But it was a good work session. I do appreciate that. I hope we were able to communicate what I heard from everybody across the board, which is we're very supportive of the campus. And we're very limited in our way of recommending solutions to their operational budget concerns. And I think we communicated that pretty well. Other comments before we do the agenda review? Why don't we take a look at that agenda, go through your consent portion, and then into the regular. I see Councilmember O'Doherty.
There's a typo in 9E. It says opioid. I assume it's opioid.
Oh. Jay Kirk's all over it. Like, he's going to get that fixed. Other questions on the consent portion? I'd like to make a comment about the regular agenda. We do have a important series of updates that we need to be making sure that we have time to address on the agenda for executive session. And of course, we also have a number of important items on that regular agenda, but we do have some timely and important items for executive session that we need to try to bear in mind as we work through that agenda. Now, I know we always try to do our best, but I just want to mention that so it's kind of on your mind, council members, for next week. We want to make sure that we get to those and that we get to those before we're falling asleep. We'll do our best. And of course, some of that's dependent on how much discussion and public comment the other items generate, which we're not in control of necessarily. But just so you know, there's an executive session that we do estimate will take some time next Tuesday. Any other questions on the agenda? See if we have any public comment. I believe that Abby is a fairly experienced reporter from what I read from the intro. So the reporter will understand that those things will be revealed in time. Abby, I don't mean to put you on the spot. Did you want to? Yeah, I see your hand. Go ahead. I'd like to give you an opportunity to speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to let all you know, I just wanted to say thank you for giving me a shout out and that I have been here listening. I just couldn't get my microphone to go until right now.
Where do you come to us from? I read the intro article in the Boomerang, but that I can't remember right now.
Yeah, I am from Steamboat, Colorado, and I actually just got here about a week and a half ago, so it's good to be here.
Well, welcome. We're glad to have you. We're glad to have you here, and I think in general, this community and members of this council have always thought there was a lot of value in making sure there was good local news reporting available about the county commission, the city council, and the things that we talk about and the things that we have going on. So we're glad to see you.
Thank you so much, and feel free to reach out anytime, and thanks for having me.
You bet. You bet. Council members, anything else? All right. Shall we say good night? We'll end the work session. Good night. Thank you all very, very much.
Take care, everyone.
Night.